Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am joined with Exulansic, and I'm so appreciative of you joining me. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I know that you have a lot to do with a lot, but obviously your main topic at the moment that seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, that seems to be garnering a lot of attention are your well backed up views on sort of gender and the effect that transgenderism is having on kids, but I guess also adults as well.
Mhm.
How do you have so much knowledge on it? Because you said, well, I'll let you take it away.
Well, I can give you a sense of my educational background. I studied gender and women's studies at Berkeley, which is the school Judith Butler's at, and she's like their patron saint. So,
Oh,
so I,
geez.
I, I was very steeped in that. I was trans identifying for a while. I pursued a lot of these ideas with the idea that I believed them. So I,
Okay.
in good faith, and came to conclusions about them through that were a result of having studied them specifically. And then, I also have a master's degree in speech pathology, and so that we have a lot of scientific background from that. And just in my own interests, I'm very curious person. I like reading about rare disorders and trying to understand them.
Okay, that's interesting. So, once upon a time, you were living that life.
Uh, yes, I was for about 4 years, starting in about 2009, is when I first encountered the topic of like genderqueer.
Yeah.
Um, I'd had gender issues since early childhood, but it wasn't attached to any ideology. There was no assembly line to get on. I just was stressed about gender expectations and styling myself and other people's thoughts and why social stuff happened the way it did. But then you get to college and there's a whole structure for it because this was when I was in college that I was first exposed to it. But not immediately either. Like, it kind of hit when I was already well into college.
Oh, right.
That was, I feel like I would have encountered the ideas earlier because I was already in the gender and women's studies department for years at
Yeah.
that point when I first kind of encountered these ideas.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a coincidence, but
Yeah. You'd think that they would kind of. I don't know what it's like over there, but these days, when it's Freshers' Week, they're already kind of pouncing. Um, but I
yeah.
don't think they even really have to nowadays because it's just, as I've said to you, it's just getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
And I
I
emailed.
genuinely don't know why they haven't started trying to prescribe these puberty blockers to infants. I feel like that's around the corner because infants
Yeah.
go. They have their own puberty. It's called mini puberty of infancy that lasts for the first 6 months or so, where they
Do
have
they really?
testosterone. Yeah, an elevated level of testosterone that's and estrogens and all that originates in the pituitary and
Yeah.
hypothalamic gonadal axis. Like there's a period when they're fetuses, a period when they're early infants, and then adolescents are like these 3 periods of elevated sex hormones
Well,
development. So I don't know why they haven't started trying to figure out whether if he likes the wrong stuffy, then
give it
maybe
time.
he'd be happier.
Yeah. Give it time. I'm sure they'll get there.
Yeah.
Um, So what do you know what it's like in the States in schools? Because obviously the first time I spoke to you was about my son who was 13 and from the age of 12, 11, 12, it was a huge part of the school curriculum. There were boards everywhere saying, LGBTQIA plus club is on a Thursday, chess club is on Thursday evening.
Mhm.
And then obviously when he moved up a year, there are just lessons every week about how people shouldn't be bigoted towards them, which is fine, but there's never anything negative. And so this is just a few people that I've spoken to, and these are,
Yeah.
these are just rough guesses, but
If
they're
this was a
saying,
natural category and not a recruiting religion that comes with drug use and surgery, this wouldn't be a problem. But it's a
yeah,
problem because there's an assembly line attached that people end up really broken by,
yes,
and because it's founded on lies and it's a religious idea that shouldn't be in schools. And so we're seeing it escalate because they've like religious forces have realized this is the avenue. This is the way we can get into schools again.
where do you think this whole thing comes from? I feel like such a kind of base level person with this because I know that your knowledge is extremely high, and a lot of
Yeah,
people
thank
that
you.
follow you have a very high level of knowledge on this, and I don't, and some of my audience probably don't.
Hmm.
But where do you think this has all arrived from? I mean, why the need to kind of push people, especially girls in this country, into this kind of assembly line, like you put it?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a profit motive. Um, they're going after the young kids because if you can get them onto drugs younger, then they not only more likely to end up addicted to the drugs for life, but they're more it's going to warp their development in other ways, and so then they're lifelong patients.
Hmm.
And once you define them as having gender dysphoria, like they're the adult problems that are the result of the puberty blockers then get blamed on the gender dysphoria or on society's treatment of trans people. And so it's
Yeah,
just like this justification for endless policy change and reorganization. And why girls though, especially, I would assume it's partly because some of the interventions I think are it's easier to pressure them into getting them over out of the way quickly, and because it is somewhat traumatic to acquire that as a teenage girl. I think most
yeah,
teenage girls go through a level of stress about growing breasts, and it feels very out of control. And then once they get through that gate, they're pretty invested in the um, ideology. So whereas for
yeah,
boys, they don't have that same pound of flesh right off the bat.
yeah. That's fair enough. I do wonder, just with what you were talking about, how they will age. I often think about girls that are 20, 22, and they're trans now, and they've got
Mm.
a phalloplasty. They've had a phalloplasty.
Yeah, phalloplasty for like years, and uh, or
What's that
or
going to look like in 50 years?
stuff sags, and it's going to change thickness, and you might think you don't have a fistula there now because it's got a certain amount of thickness and elasticity, and then that's going to change, and then you might discover that you actually do have a fistula there, and now it's symptomatic. Now you're getting infections from it. And I've worked in a lot of skilled nursing homes as a in my capacity as a speech therapist, and it's some of those patients are in a very complicated situation. And one thing I learned is that if you have a patient that's like even if they normally like it's really hard to communicate with them, there you can still kind of see a change in mental status, which can indicate that they have an infection. So I had a woman that where she had a stroke and she like spoke a different language, but we could have a back and forth conversation. I
Yeah,
didn't understand it, but we could still like there she needed the emotional
communicate.
connection. Yeah, we had a connection. And then one day I went in and she was just talking to the shadow people on the wall and I couldn't get her to interact with me. And then it turned out she had a urinary tract infection. And it's
Wow.
like, yeah, and once that was fixed, she went back to her baseline. She didn't go
Yeah.
back to normal, but she went back to her post stroke new normal.
Wow. That's
Um,
crazy. I didn't realize a UTI could.
because they can't figure out where it's coming from. It drives them batty.
Yeah.
Like, they get paranoid or they can't interpret the sensations, and so their brain, like, literally can't tell whether they heard something or felt something in a
Mm.
way. So it's like they hear voices and then they can fabulate because they're older. It's just not firing on all cylinders, so they kinda start tripping in a way, I think. Or sometimes they could actually have an infection in the bloodstream, and then the brain is dysfunctioning for that reason. Septic.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus, that's terrifying.
Yeah, you it's it's a really serious problem when you have something that's causing a your UTI and you can't fix it.
Yeah, I bet. So what do you think of I'm sorry to kind of reel these all off like it's a game show, but what do you think of how politicians are handling this? Because you say there's a profit incentive, which there absolutely is. Obviously, here we have the NHS, so it's free, but obviously there's still somebody making money at some point down the line,
Right.
usually
And
a
they're also
foreign.
selling a lot of these surgeries privately. Like, just because 'cause they're also on the NHS salary doesn't mean they can't, like, moonlight.
Yeah, yeah. Um, why do you think politicians? I mean, when I saw, I won't try not to bring politics in it too much, but when I saw the White House LGBT transgender convention a few months ago, where they were bringing 14-year-old girls up, I never thought I would see America do that. Is that just me being naive?
When you saw the convention when they were bringing 14-year-old girls up where?
There was I'll send you the video that they did like an hour and a half thing where
Yeah.
it was at the White House and they brought up a series of transgender kids, all between the ages of sort of 11 and 18, 19.
Mhm.
Some of them were post-op, some of them were pre-op, some of them had taken hormones, some of them it was just the dress code. And
Right.
there was Jen Psaki and there was the Home Business Secretary or someone, and they were all kind of, this is Archie. He's a really good kid. He's 6 years now. And I was like, wow, I have never seen politicians anywhere else in the world kind of put this conveyor belt of transgender children out to the rest of the world as if like this is cool, it's normal. But yeah,
Yeah. Um, there's just a profound detachment from what it's going to mean for them down the road,
yeah,
and a hyper focus on how cool it is that we made the boy look like a girl, knowing that's going to change them permanently.
that's a huge reason. Is I look at people and I think I don't think you understand that like once you're changed, you will never feel the same again. Even once they get over it, they will never feel the same again. Anyway, um,
Yeah, and
so
and and then they're doing it to kids who don't even know how they would have felt in the first place. So they don't have a comparison. Even they won't
well,
know what they lost. And then the puberty, it just chokes it so far upstream, that I can't believe that they can't anticipate that it's going to have so many unimaginable effects to be, because they it would be kinder, it would be much more direct if they would just castrate them. That would, I think, be better for them, because then they're just removing the sex hormones. But when you apply this gonadotropin releasing hormone, it doesn't just flip a light switch that turns puberty off, you know, that does it away. There's a way it does that. And it's stimulating many different important areas, basal ganglia, hypothalamus, pituitary, that are also all growing at the same time, and would be
yeah,
releasing follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and those things all do other things in a lot of places. And it's just,
frightening.
this is, it's like if you have the toxic waste, where you dump in the river depends on what towns get sick.
Okay,
So we're dumping it
yeah,
far upriver when we do the puberty blockers, versus if we did an actual like traditional just straight castration.
where it would be just at the end of the river.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it might only affect well, it would still affect all of the structures, just not on as many levels and
How? So
as
tell me,
many.
like, tell a stupid person like me, how does it actually work? Like with say the female to male, like how would an average transition go? So you're 14 and you're like, Mum, I feel like a boy, and
Mhm.
they take you to a doctor. What would the first thing they would do be in America, like give or take? Not
Uh,
exact, but just roughly.
Depending on where you go, they may or may not have what's called an informed consent process. Although we're talking about 14-year-olds, but so maybe something the parents are going through. And that's where they're just kind of told a list of risks, but they don't have mental health evaluation. Other times there might be one mental health evaluation, or sometimes more than one. Medically, they would initiate them on the puberty blockers, for female to male. After a period of time on the puberty blockers, they put typically either a shot or an implant in the arm. Um, Normally your brain is producing the hormone that this is imitating, in a pulsing kind of manner,
Hmm.
and that rhythm changes based on the time of day and based on the time of year. And so it's a very complex rhythm,
Hmm.
and it's causing things to develop. And so similarly, like if you think about the rhythm of light for night and day for plants, and the effect of changing that pattern on a plant,
Hmm.
like as the days get shorter, some plants that will trigger blooming. And by giving it as a continuous implant, they are effectively keeping the plant in the dark all the time.
Okay.
Um, but if you try to grow a plant in the dark, putting it in the dark doesn't make it stop growing. It just makes it
Mm.
grow weird.
Yeah.
Like it's all long, it's looking for light because it's alive, and living
Yeah.
things don't pause. So it's I don't know what they expect to happen. And then when they put them on the testosterone, my understanding is that typically the testosterone can then suppress the ovarian function on its own. And so for
Hmm.
girls at that point, the puberty blockers are stopped. But it seems like for boys, they keep them on the puberty blockers because the estrogen's not enough to stop the testicles from working on its own. And
Okay.
then they will stay on that until they do the castration. So that can be a way for them to be pushing for the bottom surgery for the males by saying we need to get you off of this medication. It's
Okay.
dangerous for you to still be on the puberty blocker, but if we take you off it, your testicles will start working again and you'll masculinize. So here are your choices.
Hmm.
Which might have been. I don't know that this was in any of the consultations that were aired, but it might have been part of why Jazz Jennings' surgery was done when he was still 17.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you more about the Jennings later on. Okay,
It
and
also has
then
something to do with Kim Petras. He was also put on puberty blockers pretty young.
I know Kim. Yeah, the blonde-haired
Yeah, the one that has
boy
poor
girl.
mobility. Yeah, is male to female.
Yes. Yeah. Um. Okay. So once we've done the drugs, then come the operations, and obviously for girls, you host the phalloplasty files. Um. How do you do a phalloplasty roughly? Phalloplasty for dummies.
How do they do that? The phalloplasty, they take a segment of skin that's meant to be about as long as an average penis, and they take that from either the arm or sometimes the thigh or sometimes the back, or lately I've seen them taking it from the stomach. Uh, and I'll talk about probably the more common one that I've done the responses to. They take a strip of skin that's had electrolysis, so they tried to remove all the hair, and they roll
Okay.
that up outside in to make a new urethra.
Oh.
And then they take a much larger flap from the rest of the arm and then roll that up on like the outside, like a double fruit roll up.
Yep.
And then it's outside out, and so then they try. That's the new phallus, and then that gets sewn onto the structures of the pubis, and they will use often the labia. Sometimes they'll actually do what's called a vaginectomy, where they go in and actually cut out the vagina and to use that
Jesus.
tissue to extend the urethra so that it so kind of goes around. So we've created this very long tube out of skin that's completely severed on one, like all down length of it, more or less.
Yeah.
So
I'm
it's
sure that's
very
watertight.
frequently full of holes, and
Yeah.
there's many videos of them talking about finding out that they were full of holes because they went to void. They went to go to the bathroom and it just started spurting out from the base like a cartoon.
Jesus, I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh because it's
You shouldn't,
utterly.
but it's also objectively comical. Like it's
Yeah,
horrifying. It's body horror, but
it
it's
is. It yeah, it is horrifying, but it is. I remember hearing you saying that somebody was peeing out of their scrotum.
yeah, it was, and then it was swelling up, and so he was having to squeeze it,
Yeah,
and squirt it out. Can you? I don't want like yeah. I just
what a lovely, imagine going through all that. And the thing is, I feel bad for people that genuinely have, you know, soul tearing gender dysphoria. So somebody that every single day of their life
Hmm,
has thought, this is not me. I'm repulsed by everything about this gender.
yeah. But
But
sometimes people are sick. They just get
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
preoccupied with an explanation, but maybe it's not actually what's would make them happy.
Yes. Yeah.
And just this superstitious idea that if we change the outside to match the delusion, it'll make them feel better. It's
Yeah.
it's it's not supported, and it's definitely not supported in the lack of reduction in suicidality, which they're very quick to then blame on me. There's like, they're like, "Well, it's your fault for not accepting them more." Not me specifically, but like
No, I know what
society.
you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe lately, me specifically. I
Yeah.
actually have some
Yeah.
people tell me that you're harming
You
people.
have people follow you around, don't you? Like follow you around the internet.
Yeah, especially Desmond is Amazing's mother, Wendy Napolis, was going from platform to platform to get my documentary about her kid taken down.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Yeah, he was pretty famous, wasn't he, for a while?
he's
Uh,
apparently on Netflix this season of The Mind, so I guess
oh, right.
he's still got a career going. He
Oh.
seems to not be doing so well.
Yeah, I remember seeing him hanging around with I can't remember the guy's last name, but his first name's Michael, and he was in a book called Party Monster. You'll know his name,
No, Michael Alec, yeah.
Michael Alec, and they were
Mhm.
talking about drugs and
Yeah,
partying, and
and,
he was like 9 or something.
yeah, and about how he was gonna be a club kid. What kind of club
Yeah,
kid was he gonna be? Has he been in sweaty clubs yet?
yeah.
It's like and they were underneath a painting that said "Rohypnol" on it.
Oh, I didn't even know. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if you want a good life, just follow Michael Alec. I'm sure his mum
He
guided
OD'd.
him. Yeah,
Yeah, that
sure
was
she.
a highlight of that research project,
I bet
finding that
she
out.
is a crazy, crazy lady. Um, but yeah, so I do feel bad for those people, but this is just my opinion. But I feel like the people that have extreme gender dysphoria are ill. I know I'll probably get taken down for
Mhm,
this again for saying that, but most of the world would say something similar, and I think
mhm,
they need help, and
mhm,
I'm happy to help in any way I can. But I also think that I know we get told off for saying things are fads, but in this country, between 2010 and 2020, it increased by 140,000%. And I'm
Okay, I mean,
like,
I expected a ridiculous number. I was
how is
still
that
2
not a
you
fad?
were 2 orders of magnitude larger than I expected somehow.
All right,
I
well,
was
there you
expecting a
go.
four-digit number. I was not expecting a six.
You know, it's enormous. Like I did a video on it, and I was thinking, how is this not a fad? And then I had a couple of
It's
people say,
clearly a
well,
fad. It's
yeah,
clearly a sex lobotomy.
it's just
We're gonna have a lot of
kids.
very regretful people.
Winston stopped writing, partly because he was suffering from cramp. He did not know what had made him pour out this stream of rubbish